This is Don't Panic, episode number 279, recorded June 22nd, 2020. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Don't Panic. I could do a joke, but we don't have time for that. The show that, I should say, covers our 7th WWDC. I'm Sean Jennings, joined as always by Colby Rabadoo and by phone, Dan Miller. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hi. This was the first. I watched I watched the keynote almost every year, but this is the first year I wasn't being like actively neglectful of my job because technically I'm a mobile developer now, so it's like weirdly relevant to my life.
Good. Hey, maybe you can give us some perspective instead of us just talking out of our ass about it.
Yeah, maybe. I can't count on that. I'm not a very good mobile developer, but it was fun. That's all. It was so hot here yesterday. Was it hot where you are?
Yes.
Whew.
Sunday it was hot.
And sweaty.
Yep. My freezer was not keeping up with the...
Damn.
It was also probably, it's hot, so like I'm putting more ice in my water, so you're probably going in there more than, it's a vicious cycle. But...
Can't have warm drinks.
No,
that would be
not
unacceptable.
animal. Yeah.
Dan, you were out of town this evening, so you were joining us by phone.
Yes. From an undisclosed location.
Yes, you're in the place where Apple makes its silicon. That's
yeah, underneath the fountain in the middle of Apple Park.
Yep, we locked him in the lab. He's got to get those chips ready.
Yes. I'm calling in from an undisclosed location that had it's not a technologically actually it's a mixed bag. So I show up and the Wi-Fi is terrible. And then, by triangulating where the Wi-Fi signal is coming from, I come to learn that the Wi-Fi router is in the laundry room in the basement. In like the worst possible place you could put it and still be in the house. But I tried to move it with just moving the cable. You know how like cable modems, you take the cable out of the wall that would go into your TV and you plug it into the modem.
Yeah.
I tried to just take the one out of the TV upstairs and put the cable modem in there, and it did not work. But then I realized that for whatever reason, they do have Ethernet outlets in rooms.
Nice.
So I was able to figure out which outlet in the basement corresponds to which outlet upstairs, and then run the modem downstairs, plug string Ethernet along to the various patch connectors, and then plug the Wi-Fi router in upstairs, and it worked. And now I have glorious 802.11g internet or Wi-Fi. And that has been I forgot how bad G internet is. It doesn't. Yeah, the range is pretty good, but I've gotten used to just being able to treat Wi-Fi like it's as fast as the internet can be.
Yeah.
And I wish I had brought an Ethernet cable, but I didn't.
Never leave home without it.
Yeah.
Never will.
Even
again.
if I had brought a cable, I wouldn't have had an adapter. I would need to get one of those USB-C
That's right.
dinglies. Yeah.
Well, Dan, you sound great over Skype audio, so...
Do I?
Yes, you sound
Oh,
as
wow.
good as you do at home.
Yeah, it's
Sweet.
surprisingly good.
But that is
That's
one
great.
of the reasons that I've always hesitated to take us off of Skype, is because as much as it runs like garbage and as much as it's old-fashioned, it does work. Skype, when we have tech problems, it's usually never Skype itself. It's usually something else.
Yeah.
So that's
Like
I'll
my
give it
crappy
credit.
computer.
It is relatively reliable.
Yeah,
Um,
it's true.
Well, we have got a lot to discuss tonight. As I mentioned, our annual tradition, our 7th WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference from the Apple Corporation. a big announcement. I hope you both had an opportunity to watch. It was very funny watching a live stream of a pre-recorded event. Felt a little stupid, but that's okay. It was still a hoot. What did you guys think? So this year, a different format. Obviously, WWDC not taking place in person due to the coronavirus, and so it was the first ever pre-recorded announcement from Apple. Very slickly produced, one of my favorite television genres of very expensive looking. What did you guys think? Did you prefer it against the traditional audience demo?
I actually kind of did. Like, I don't know if I prefer it necessarily, but I think I appreciate it. Like, I found during this whole thing that programs that are recorded in front of a live audience that are suddenly not recorded in front of a live audience anymore are like totally different, and I kind of like it better sometimes. Like John Oliver's show, for example, is like there's no one clapping after every single thing he says, so it's like, sometimes he says stuff that's not funny. It's not funny, and no one laughs politely or cheers even though it wasn't funny.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not funny. But then he says things that are funny, and it's funny. So I felt the same way about this, because I feel like the Apple keynotes are very much like that, where it's like they say like one thing, and then everyone have to wait for everybody to clap, and then they say another thing, and like nobody claps, but it's still awkward, and then so there was none of that. It was a lot more streamlined. I kind of enjoyed it. It seemed pretty high production value for holy moly.
Yep, it was pretty to look at.
Yeah, I don't know if I needed to see all the details of those Apple software engineering managers' faces, but like
it was very HD.
Did.
It was very funny. I'm like, Greg Federighi looks different this close. Like, I'm not used to like him being that close to the camera.
Yeah. Did you watch, Dan?
Yeah, I did. I watched the first half live. I watched the second half after the fact.
Nice.
But yeah, I agree. I think it was different, but not worse. Maybe better in some ways. I thought that. Did you get the sense that those kind of quick cuts with the spy music was meant to be comedic? Like sometimes it took the music only played for 2 seconds. Sometimes it played for 30 seconds.
Yeah, very very little of the sort of the intentional comedy beats landed. I felt like that is where the audience would have helped a little bit, because what's great about the Apple events is not that people laugh, it's that people groan. And you do get, especially Craig Federighi always has one or two, just like a hair joke or something, and you always get that little bit of groan. And you didn't get that, but I did appreciate that they try to bring in some of those little jokey bits.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting way. I just think I've complained in episodes before how much I think these events have gotten stale and uninteresting, and I think this was a nice change of pace. I also think, when I watch these events, it's not for me about the fact that they announced something, it's them showing how it works. And so to have the demos pre-recorded, and even like those little like kind of quick cut promo reels they would run before he'd say what it is, widgets, and then they'd sort of show you kind of a marketing video of it. It's like, that's a much easier way for me to understand what it is than Tim Cook just saying it out loud with a PowerPoint behind, or a keynote behind him on the stage explaining it. So that's what I liked about it. Visually, it was so much clearer what all of these different functions did. When they can go out to the BMW in the parking lot and actually show you how it works, and I thought that kind of stuff was really great. We've got a bunch of announcements to get through, guys. I guess we can do them in order, starting with iOS 14. A lot of great new stuff in here. But sort of the biggest one, and the first one they start with, is sort of the visual nature of iOS 14, starting with the biggest change to the iOS home screen in years, widgets. Android called. They said they wanted their feature they developed a decade ago back. Widgets come in a variety of sizes. Apple allows widgets to not only be in the Today view, but also be added to the main home screen right alongside your apps. To add them, there's a new widget gallery where users can easily add and customize widgets. There's also a new Smart Stack widget that automatically shows relevant apps based on the time of day. That's my short 1 to 2 sentence description of widgets.
That's cool. I'm into that. I do think, like, at least for me, this Siri, like, app suggestions in the search panel, like, work, like, pretty well. Like, like, there are certain apps I use in the morning exclusively, and they will usually be in that thing when I, like, pop it down. So, like, that being, like, a little more, like, front and center would be pretty nice. I don't know if I want widgets or not. Like, I gave up on ever having anything like widgets like ages ago. Because, I don't know. Like you said, Android has had this for 10 years since we were in college.
Do either of you use the widgets that exist now when you swipe left on the pull down, friend? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like, I only use them to check the batteries on my devices.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the only thing I use it for.
And honestly, there is a battery widget that they showed off, and I'm like, I'm for sure installing that. That's great.
Yeah.
I don't mind the idea of widgets. I just don't think I'll ever have 30 of them. Like, there's like 3 apps I can think. A battery, podcasts, where I can one-click play from the home screen, and probably one more, calendar maybe. But like, I maybe that's okay. Like, maybe you don't need 100 of them, and they're not obtrusive. That was one of the issues I had with the widgets on Android, is they looked like garbage. They looked so bad because there was no design standard between them, and they were all kinds of weird shapes and sizes. And I think if this is just it's not a game changer, but I think it makes sense. I don't think it's a bad direction to go.
Yeah.
And I do think the existing widgets in the Today view, Dan, like you were saying, I think those needed some sort of more jazzy, more visual, more colorful update, because I think they are a little flat in the current design.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like them being off in a corner is like, no one's ever going to use them.
Right.
I so rarely used it. Yeah, that was going to be my point.
Yeah.
I'm excited to... Yeah, I think I would use them if there's a battery widget. I think you're right. But definitely weather. Like, I would like weather on my home screen. And I used Android back in the day when they had this stuff. And that was nice. But Android battery life was always terrible. So, yeah, I don't know if that's true now. But hopefully that doesn't... These widgets aren't a battery tanker. But if any past stuff is an indication, it won't be. Which is great.
Yeah. Apple also announced a new app library view that automatically organizes your apps into groups and lists. You now have the ability to hide apps on the main home screen by hiding different pages. And it creates a sort of app drawer like Android as well. Another great Android feature. It does have smart grouping features, like automatically pulling all your Apple Arcade games into one batch. It'll have your recently downloaded. It'll have sort of machine learning. Most recommended apps you'll probably use will all be in buckets. There'll also be a search box and an ability to scroll through all of your apps alphabetically.
I'm into that. I'm tired of organizing things into folders.
I just use search.
Yes.
I just use search, and I've given up on organizing my apps.
Yeah, like, I just use search, but also I started having trouble, like, finding things to delete them.
Well, that was one of my favorite updates in iOS 13, was the App Store ability to swipe and delete an app from updates.
It's crazy.
That was a good idea, and I have done that a lot.
I didn't even know I could do that.
Oh, yeah. Now, am I still the only idiot who still does manual updates because I like to know when my apps are updating?
I don't know. I mean, I do manual updates too, but I go to the App Store and, like, refresh for updates.
Oh,
like,
yeah, okay. I do that too.
Like, multiple times
We're
a day.
such dorks.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Well,
I will do that occasionally if I'm bored, but I have manual updates on.
I do that. That's one of the things I do
updates.
first thing in the morning.
Well,
yeah.
What it is for me is that at one point back when, like, app update descriptions actually meant something, it would always be like they talk about a new feature or a new change, and, like, I'd want to know about it. And so it's like, don't automate. I want to read it. Now they're all just like performance and bug updates, and, like, they all say that, and I'm like, this is not. Why am I doing this? Reading
the update notes was like a mini Apple keynote, right? It was
yes.
Like, ooh, a new button in Foursquare or something.
It used to be fun.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. Another new feature, Apple is adding system-wide picture-in-picture to iOS videos. Videos will hover over app and can be adjusted and sized or collapsed into the side of the display to continue playing the audio in the background. It'll also work with FaceTime calls.
Sweet.
FaceTime calls is what I'm really excited about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so dumb that you can't have the video. You can still do the call, but there's no videos allowed.
Yep. I agree. And I love the idea of the audio playing in the background. I would love, like, when sports finally come back, and the ability to, like, have the game still playing while I'm browsing on my phone would be awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, but then YouTube won't do it, so.
Although I did read, this was sort of a side announcement, but 4K YouTube is finally coming to Apple TV. So, you know, although I did notice at one point they put up the picture of the original iPhone when they were talking about, you know, things changing and stuff, and they removed the original YouTube app, where it's like the little TV and it was the YouTube app, and they sort of just scrubbed that out. They said forget about that was ever on there. App clips. This was a big one. A name that I really don't care for. App clips are speedy card-based snippets of apps that let you access small parts of apps when you need them without requiring you to install the full app. Examples given included accessing a parking app through an NFC tag or coffee store's reward programs. It will support sign-in with Apple to avoid having to make new accounts. Can be accessed again through the new app library and will work with Apple Pay. To go with Apple Clips, Apple is launching a new QR code format that uses both visual codes and NFC to access app clips quickly. You'll be able to get app clips from website links, from NFC, from regular QR codes, from Apple QR codes, and all sorts of things like that. Yeah.
As someone who just recently had to download an app to pay for parking, yes, this will be great.
Nice.
I wonder, one of the examples they gave was like storefronts, and I wonder what specifically they have in mind. Like, why would you do that instead of Apple Pay if you're a restaurant or a storefront?
Well, I think they didn't say this, pure speculation on my part, but they used the Yelp example where they said Yelp will be able to make app clips for individual restaurants. And I think at that point that's to like, oh, you want to quickly leave a review on Yelp, but you don't already have the Yelp app, or you want to like review a restaurant's menu in Yelp, but you don't want to download the whole app.
Yeah,
would be my guess.
Was this where there was the blue bottle example too, or was that
yes, like a rewards program? Yeah. You know, like they say, if you're trying it out for the first time, although I don't know why you would do a rewards program if it was the first time, but
yeah, I was wondering if it was a rewards program, how would they track you?
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess you'd sign in with Apple login after.
Yeah. Well, that would be nice because I miss out on so many rewards programs these days because, well, back when I went to places.
Well, and that's
I didn't want to keep all the cards.
I think that's the app library integration where then, let's say you go back to the store a second time or something, it'll stay in your app library from the clip, and then when you click on it, you'll have the ability to download the whole app. And theoretically, I believe you'd already be signed in. So they're just streamlining that process.
Yeah. It seems cool. I feel like that's one of those things where you gotta wait and see what people actually do with it. So it could be useful. It could just be nothing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the interesting part of this for me personally is sign in with Apple, which have you guys been using it? I have not used it once.
No. I also
used it
don't.
A lot.
Really? I don't think I've signed into a lot of new apps recently.
Because Apple added those restrictions / I don't know how Apple would phrase it, guarantees that I think any app that you can sign into now, if you are not signed into it, when you launch it, you're prompted to sign in with Apple amongst other options. So, like this car rental app I downloaded a couple weeks ago, signed in with Apple. There's this other thing. It was like, search for, I don't know. It was like oh, like look around at like what houses cost. I was like, sign with Apple. Like, sure. If it hadn't been a sign with Apple button, I wouldn't have signed into that one because I was like, well, I don't care enough about this that I want to save like the things I've seen because I'm just screwing around. But if it's one button to sign with Apple and I get to save the stuff I saw and they don't get any of my personal information, fine, sure, I'll press it.
Those fuckers will email you aggressively too. Aggressively.
Yeah, they got the special Apple generated email address.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing they announced today, a smaller part of the announcement, that you'll soon be able to convert your existing accounts to sign in with Apple. So if you've created an account with an email address and password, or you signed in with another service, you'll be able to convert that into a sign in with Apple account, which I'll be interested to see how many people do that.
I'm interested to see how that works, because it seems to be something that has to happen on the app side. Like, Apple can't just turn that on.
Right, no, I think the example they used was like they used Kayak as example, and you would have to log into Kayak, go into your Kayak account settings, and do it there.
Now, I wonder, will they be requiring that all apps that you can sign into on the App Store also offer you the ability to transfer your account to an Apple ID?
That's a good question.
That'd be nice.
I mean, clearly they're aggressively pushing people towards that. It was mentioned a lot during today's announcement in several different ways. Let's keep rolling here. Siri has a new view. Instead of that taking over your whole screen thing when you activate it, it's now just a small overlay at the bottom of this display. Siri can also now send audio messages in addition to just dictated messages. Similarly, incoming phone calls and FaceTime calls will also appear with a less obtrusive new pop-up instead of taking over the entire screen. I say yes. Thank you. I hated the Siri screen.
Yeah. Yeah, all of those things are such an interruption. Especially if you don't do it. Well, phone calls are always a surprise, but like Siri is like, you know, if you do it on accident, which happens sometimes. But
it's the point that it doesn't need the whole screen. Like, how often have you done something on Siri where you're even reading something on your screen? Most of my requests are like, set a timer, turn on the lights, or like stuff that I don't need to look at the screen anyway.
Yep. Fact.
I now live with someone whose whole job, basically, it seems like sometimes is to be on phone calls with people. And this was the only announcement she was excited about. And as soon as I said it, she was like, oh, I didn't even have to explain. I was like, now when you get a phone call, it doesn't take over the screen. She's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I also just saw a tweet that said, how come the blue bottle in the Apple keynote contains a flat top grill, but no actual coffee making equipment? Did you notice this?
Oh, you didn't know it was Blue Bottle burgers and fries?
Hilarious.
Oh, someone says, I think that's the top of an espresso machine. Oh, that makes it less funny.
Always something to point out. Apple announced a new Translate app that will be built into iOS, which will allow users to easily translate between languages. They'll be able to enter text or dictate them and have them translate into 11 languages. It will also be integrated into Siri as well and be on all of the various different Apple devices. Cool. Messages is also getting new features. You'll be able to pin important contacts and conversations to the top of the Messages app to easily talk to your favorite friends or group chats. There's also new Memoji accessories. Apple is also adding threaded conversations and group chats and mention notifications to ping specific people in chat, taking a shot at the bow of every collaboration app out there. Pinning contacts and conversations to the top of Messages was, I think, in my top 3, if not number 1 favorite thing of today's announcement. It sounds stupid, but I have so many conversation threads, and I'm one of those guys who read messages and then forget to respond because the little blue circle's gone and it's marked as unread, or it's marked as read. So the ability to pin something to come back to later is like, oh, I'm very excited for that.
That's cool.
I don't know. My question is going to be, how am I going to explain to my mom how to use threaded conversations and mention notifications? And I'm curious how you explain that, because I was watching them do it and I'm like, an average Joe is not going to know that feature exists.
Maybe that's okay.
Yeah, maybe it's not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, the message stuff seems cool. I don't know.
Okay, we'll keep going. I'm going to just pause after every one of these, and if we have no opinions, we're going to keep rolling. Apple Maps getting new curated guides to give better recommendations for new places. Maps is also getting support with cycling, with dedicated directions for bike riding that take into account elevation, bike packs, stairs, roads, all that kind of stuff, available in 5 cities at launch. There's also a new EV routing feature that will track the current charge of your car, factor in elevation and weather, and route you to compatible stations. It will require cooperation from car brands. They listed BMW for it already, though no specific cars were mentioned. Along with the car stuff, CarPlay is getting support for custom wallpapers and new app categories, parking app, EV chargers, and fast food takeout. And we'll talk about car keys in a second. Any thoughts on those?
No. It sounds nice if you have one of those cars. What was the thing about takeout?
Yeah, so all they said was, because right now there are certain app, you can't just build any kind of app for CarPlay. There's like an audio category. Mm-hmm. There's like different. All they said was fast food takeout apps, which means I'm assuming I will be able to order a Big Mac from my car's display. In which case,
while you're driving,
I'm fucked. I'm gonna get so fat from my because literally I've done this, not that much. But I have done it where I'm out running errands and it's lunchtime, and so I pull over in the parking lot of the store. I'll pre-order something from Taco Bell or from Panera on my phone, and I'll go and pick it up. If I can do that from the car display, oh my god, game changer.
Hey Dingus, make me a Big Mac.
Oh my god, and then imagine Siri integration with that. Oh boy, am I boned. Not great.
That sounds nice. I went on a long drive and I used CarPlay again, and it's still really great. I don't know if or when I will ever buy a car, but if I do, that will be a requirement. Although it seems like didn't they say today that 90% of all cars sold this year will have CarPlay?
Yeah, 97% of new cars will support it, which sounds about right.
Yeah.
And I would love to know what Android Auto's numbers are. They didn't say that.
A lot of them I see they have both on a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
They're moving in that direction. In addition to CarPlay, Car Key was announced, a wireless way to unlock your car with your iPhone. It'll work over NFC. The first car supported. Dan, here you go. Here's a nice car for you to buy, the 2021 BMW 5 Series. And it's working on an industry-wide standard that was use its new U1 ultra-wideband chip instead of the NFC. Once you've paired your device with a car that supports it, if you want to unlock it, you just hold your device near the reader. Once they go to U1, you'll just have to be in the vicinity of the car, kind of like the key fobs do now. You'll be asked to authenticate with Face ID or Touch ID before the car unlocks, or you can set up express mode to skip that. You can also share access to your car via iMessage. You'll be able to place limitations on what they can do with the key. The feature will support iOS 13 as well.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that on the show in the past.
Yeah, because we talked about the rumors. To me, the NFC stuff isn't very interesting. When they go to U1 and it's proximity based, and you just have to be like near your car, kind of like the wireless key fob, then I'm excited.
Yeah. I thought their bit where they like sent the key to someone temporarily was pretty cool.
Yeah, I would bet if you're like a car sharing service or something, that's going to be a really attractive way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what like Zipcar does, right? Already, they just have like things that they put in the car that do it somehow. But I would imagine if the car could just do it,
and then someone can hack in and steal your car. So
totally, yeah. Don't lose your password. Don't reuse your password.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's most of the big stuff. Obviously, there's a bunch of small stuff. I know one that may be interesting to us is they only put this on a slide. They did not say it out loud, but you will be able to set default browser and email apps.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Wild. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm interested in that for email, but not I don't see what the advantage to using. I guess if you want to sync your Chrome bookmarks, you'd use Chrome, but it's still. And I know that people don't know this. It's still the same browser with just a different coat of paint over it.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like people only care for their stuff. Like, that's why people use Chrome, because, like, your tabs are there and, like...
Yeah, I think if you're going to do select defaults, I think there's more, like, select default music app, or, I feel like there's other more interesting ways to do it than those two. But it's a good start. It's better than nothing. I know some people have really... I think when you're talking productivity, like on an iPad or something, I think that's going to make a big difference. As always, the new iOS will be out in the fall, but the developer preview is available today with plans for a public beta in July. It will work on the iPhone 6S and up, the same devices that supported iOS 13. Overall, I think pretty good. It's not a huge feature-rich one, but I think the stuff that there's nothing in there I would say was dumb or unnecessary. I think it was a pretty good list, all things considered.
Yeah. Totally.
Another one people might be excited for is the third-party music apps on the HomeKit or HomePod.
Yes, which I cannot believe. Like, how long has AirPod been around and that hasn't been a thing?
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
That's silly.
Two more things. I don't know if we talked about or if we're in the right section for it. One is the HomeKit, the what's that app called where it dims your screen and adjusts the color temperature based on the time of day.
Flux
for your house, where
adaptive lighting is what they're calling it.
That I had that idea. Just to no one will believe me. I had that idea a couple of months ago. I was like, finally doing all the smart home stuff we've been talking about. Thought, wouldn't it be great if I could fluxify my whole life by
I'm shocked. Like Hugh or somebody hasn't thought of this already.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that. And crap, what was the other thing? The AirPods 3D audio thing. Is that in this section?
It's in a later section, but we can talk about it now. There's no real audio here. Yeah, we got a couple AirPods update actually. They didn't call it AirPods OS. I was kind of hoping they would. They'll soon be able to seamlessly switch devices. And so they're updating the software that runs on AirPods. They're calling it automatic switching. It's coming to AirPods Pro, second generation AirPods, Powerbeats Pro, and Beats Solo Pro, and a firmware update will automatically switch audio inputs based on which Apple device you're using through your iCloud account. For example, if you're listening to something on your iPhone and then start playing a video on your laptop, the audio feed will automatically switch over. Or if you answer a phone call on your iPhone, your AirPods will automatically switch from your computer. Additionally, as you mentioned, Dan, spatial audio, which will be coming only to AirPods Pro. It will offer 3D surround sound style audio to replicate the movie theater experience and will constantly recalibrate based on the position of your head and the position of the device you're using. It will have support for 5.1, 7.1, and Dolby Atmos sound.
Kind of cool.
Oh, and look at this. They didn't say this out loud. iOS 14 will also add support for battery notifications, which will actively let you know when you need to charge your headphones. I like that.
Wow. Yeah. I can't believe it doesn't do that already. But it definitely doesn't do that. My headphones die on me all the time.
Will they do that, like that kind of thing where they kind of, what is that, 40% they notify you, but then they don't do it again until it's like 10%?
Right.
And I'm like, that's not...
Usually, once I hear the beep, it's usually like an emergency.
Right. Yeah, I think the spatial audio thing is wacky as hell.
Yeah, that looks really cool. I didn't get it at first, but then I was watching it, and they showed how if you move the iPad, that the sound would move unless you moved your head in sync with the iPad. Then the sound would not move. That was crazy. But the thing I'm not excited about, and I guess we'll have to wait and see how it works, is the auto switching, because what I don't want is if I'm on a Zoom call on my Mac to get a phone call and then suddenly I can't hear the thing that I thought I was able to hear.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, if I'm watching a movie on my iPad and then someone calls me and I get just like schmonked out of it. That doesn't sound good. But I hope it lets you configure. Like if I start playing music on a different device, that's pretty intentional. Like I probably meant, if the AirPods are connected to something, I probably meant to switch them. But if someone else can jerk me out of a of a thing, that sounds bad.
Yeah, like your kid starts playing something on your Apple TV in your living room, and all of a sudden you're hearing it in your AirPods.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like the Apple TV, it seems like I should have different expectations around it.
I would think that, I don't know if they have the chip. I would think spatial awareness of devices would also be part of that. What devices you're physically closest to could play a role, but I don't know if that technology... that was sort of my big high-level takeaway of this whole event was, oh, this is what a super tight ecosystem can do. Because almost everything today was like, A, it's going to be the same on every device we make, and B, because we have a zillion sensors and a bunch of different software and all this stuff, this is all stuff no one else can do because we're Apple.
Yeah. It all like works crazy together.
It's when they're like, oh, because we have these high-end sensors in the AirPods and the high-end sensors in the iPad, when you move around with them and stuff, the audio will always be right. I'm like, that's bananas.
What?
How do they do that? iPad OS 14, not a ton. A lot of the stuff we talked about for iOS is going to be in iPad OS as well. They are touting a new sidebar for navigating within apps, very similar to Mac OS. They also redesigned search on the iPad, just like Spotlight on Mac OS, finding contacts, searching on the web, or even launching apps out of it. One of the bigger things was handwriting with Apple Pencil, a new feature called Scribble, which allows you to write in any text field with the Apple Pencil, and it's converted to text. It can also automatically detect the context of information you write, like a phone number or address, something Samsung's been doing for years, and then direct you to the correct app when it's tapped. It can also render handwriting in multiple languages into text on the iPad.
Yeah. I think if the handwriting recognition works as well as it does in the pre-recorded demo, it'd be pretty cool. Useful. Yeah, also, like writing in the fields and stuff. It's pretty dope.
I just love the idea that it would smartly, you could do the thing where you press on it or whatever. It would highlight the words, you could drag it around, and then copy and then paste it as text. I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. This is neat.
Right.
Yeah, it would have been useful when I had use of only one hand. But
yeah.
Hopefully, the next poor soul who has that happen, they could use their pencil to write stuff. No.
Yeah.
Let's continue on because that's about it for iPad OS. Let's go to watch OS. Watch OS 7 is coming with several new features. Biggest of which faces. We're going to get some new multiple complication watch faces with also watch face sharing. So you will be able to share your watch faces over on a website, through social media, via iMessage, which I think is interesting because I have just a very difficult time building faces, so I think it'll be neat to be able to share them. They also announced that the Apple Watch will track dancing. They updated the Activities app to now be called Fitness, and it will be able to track a range of dance types. There will also be sleep tracking coming with watchOS 7 using machine learning. It utilizes the sensor to track your motion. So there's that. It can also track hand washing. Yes, exactly. It uses machine learning. The microphones listen for the sound of splashing water to confirm you're actually washing your hands, and then starts a countdown to make sure you've done it enough.
That's cute. It's really cute.
And
some other stuff, but that's sort of the big.
The hand washing thing is another one of those examples, Sean, of you couldn't do this if anyone was making the watch. I guess it doesn't integrate with the iPhone. Anyways, every time I wash my hands today after this, I was thinking about the little bubbly, super cute bubbly animations. I'm a fan of the hand washing thing.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's also a testament to how fast you can turn around software. I mean, this is a new problem that they've developed this for, and when you have a zillion people on staff and a tight grip on your software, you can sort of pump this thing out and it looks good, and I'm sure it works fine. So,
yep. I'm into, I've been getting into watch faces recently, in that now I have 6 different watch faces for different parts of my life. But there's really only like one watch face that has a useful number of complications, so I just use that one for everything, which is kind of boring. So I'm excited by the prospect of having more watch faces that you can put stuff on.
Well, and have multiple complications from the same app, I think is pretty exciting. Yeah. So like they said, if you could have the Nike watch face that has a bunch of Nike shit all over it and tracks all your fitness and, you know, that kind of stuff is, I think, pretty neat. Yep.
What I really want is like some sort of either Siri switching for my watch faces, or I want Siri shortcuts that let me like make the watch faces change. Like,
so there
based on time.
I will say, because they put up these little, as they always do, these slides at the end of each part of the presentation with a bunch of all the stuff they announced. And on WatchOS, they didn't talk about it, but it does say shortcuts.
Shortcuts, it's right there.
So don't know what that means, but
it probably doesn't mean what I want. But
it's hey, more shortcuts is better. So I will mention one other interesting thing about WatchOS is I believe this is the first. I might end up being corrected. I believe this is the first WatchOS update that will not support some Apple Watches. This will only support Watch Series 3 and up. It will not support the original Series and Series 2.
Wow.
Apple TV got a couple small updates, nothing super major. Multi-user support for Apple Arcade. So you can track your individual game stats, also bringing additional controller support. Apple TV also getting picture-in-picture in iOS 14. They use the example of watching the news while you work out and things like that. There'll also be home support, some amount of home support. They didn't really show it off too much, but some amount of home support on Apple TV, which is new as well. And
one cool thing they showed off was like you have one of those video doorbells, and when someone rings your doorbell, your TV can show who's at the door.
Cute.
Yep. And actually, one thing we didn't talk about with the cameras in HomeKit is it now has facial detection. And it actually uses the Photos app that has already identified, it's all on machines, so they don't ping it to the server. They actually use your photos to detect who it is, and then it will actually say on screen, Colby is at the door, or your HomePod will say out loud, Colby just rang the doorbell, which is kind of like, okay, this is bonkers stuff.
That's awesome.
Which, again, I don't think anyone else is doing that, nor I don't even know if they could. You know, like, Nest is never going to be able to do that.
Certainly not, like, on premises.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it's really, the demo looked really slick. It did remind me, however, now that Apple TV has multi-user support, that iPad still doesn't have multi-user support.
That's weird.
Which seems like one of those things they'll announce in 2 or 3 years when they'll be like, how come they never did it until now? A strange one.
Inconvenient.
All right. Any thoughts on anything before we get to Mac OS?
No, sir.
We're chugging along here. This is just like Apple's announcement. People are going to think we pre-recorded this. Big Sur is here. And interestingly enough, it's not 10 point whatever. This is macOS 11.
I can't believe no one talked about that. Like, looking back on it, this should have been an obvious question, but I never heard anyone discuss whether it would be the new major version or not.
Well, and they didn't. It was interesting because in the announcement itself, they didn't say that. I mean, I think they really are in the same way Windows is going away from kind of versioning like that. They're really focusing on the Big Sur name and not so much on the number. Not a ton of changes that they pointed out, mostly design stuff. They say the biggest redesign since macOS 10. It's fascinating. We saw some Mac features come to iPad, and we saw iOS and iPad features get smashed into macOS in a lot of ways, including a control center, which iOS users are clearly very familiar with, a new notification center, which has notifications and widgets. The new redesigned one from iOS will be there as well. The menu bar is now taller and more translucent. What else? A number of apps now have streamlined new designs, mail, photos, notes, iWork, etc. updated messages with, again, all those iOS features we talked about, the pinning, the threading, all that, emoji stickers and all that kind of stuff. Maps got an update again with the same stuff we talked about. The dock buttons have been redesigned to look more like their iOS counterparts. Safari has updates. They say it loads faster, new tab view, customizable start page, built-in automatic translation. I'm going through a lot here. Extensions in Safari with a dedicated extension store in the App Store with a lot of control over which sites the extensions run on. Woof. Yeah, I think that's pretty much most of the big stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited for Messenger to be Messenger feature parity.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, I can't believe it has been the way it is for so long.
It was amazing when it first came out.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
yeah,
amazing
now it
because it was on
feels
your
l-
computer, and then like 6
Right.
months later, it's like, oh, it doesn't really work.
Well, I believe Apple said a lot of these updated macOS apps are Catalyst apps, and so
Right.
they are designed to be the same, which I think bodes well for the future of keeping them in sync with features and designs.
Totally. Yeah, they definitely Messenger was definitely on that list of Catalyst ones. I really just want an Overcast Mac app, especially like post-pandemic. Like, it would really make my life a lot better if I could just listen
Well,
to
Colby-
podcasts on my computer.
You're getting one.
Am I? Did he say that for
Yes.
real? Oh, thank God.
I say this for real because, well, this is an amazing segue, Sean.
Oh,
But
well,
in
yeah.
if you just buy another Mac in the future, you could run Overcast natively on your Mac.
Right.
No
which is-
update necessary.
I'm waiting to see which of you get the developer kit. Yeah, before we move on to the new Apple Silicon, any other thoughts on Big Sur and the new features coming in this, which will come to Intel Macs as well? I will say I do not like the new app designs. I think iPad and iPhone look a certain way for a reason, and I respect that. But maybe it's because I'm a Windows user and a lunatic, but I like my apps on my desktop and laptop to sort of just look more complex, I guess. Like, it just looks like I'm using an iPad, and to me, it kind of loses some of that desktopiness. I don't know. It was also very funny because when they were doing all the demos in the video, I was like, I wanted him to just reach out and touch the screen. Because I'm like, literally, like the control center, I'm like, they have sliders now. I'm like, that's for your finger. Like, I'm like, the whole design is like designed for touch. It's very bizarre to me. And I get why they're doing it. But I did kind of feel like this super translucent sort of sidebar stuff and all this. Yeah, I wasn't digging it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it looks fine. Like,
Oh, it's not bad.
I feel like most of the apps I use are not like Apple built-in apps anyways, so I feel like it's not going to affect my life at all, honestly. Maybe the notification center stuff will, because right now notification center is totally useless to me. It's just
1,000,000%
like
agree.
it's
Yeah.
filled with garbage notifications that I never ever look at because they're not like organized in a useful way at all.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Well, we saved the biggest announcement for last. We'll need smart computer people like you guys to tell me what's up with this. But in what was called a historic day for the Mac by Tim Cook, mentioning how they went to PowerPC and then to Mac OS X, the move to Intel, and now Apple is moving to their own ARM-powered Silicon Mac computers. They say they're going to release their... Now, first of all, they have not come up with a clever name. They just called it Apple Silicon throughout the entire event. They didn't call it ARM. They didn't come up with a... So I hope they have a more clever name. I believe the first processor is the A12Z, is the one that they mentioned will be in the developer kit. They plan to release the first Mac by the end of this year and expects the transition to take 2 years. They did say new Intel-powered Macs will be in the pipeline, so they're not moving exclusively quite yet, but it is a big shift. The biggest, let's see. Apple is promising new levels of performance at far less power, though they didn't really put any numbers on that. They just said it was really very fast and pointed out a couple of examples of 5 gigabyte Photoshop file running, several 4K streams. They point out that PowerPoint was going to be really fast, and I'm like, cool. Big Sur will also include a new version of Rosetta, which will automatically translate existing apps to work on the new platform. It will also use virtualization for running Linux on the new Macs. They say it should be an easy transition. You'll just have to recompile your apps in Xcode, and you should be able to quickly move over. They're launching a new quick start programs for developers with documentation and sample codes. As we were talking about, there will be a developer transition kit, which will be the form of a Mac Mini with the A12Z chip, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a 512 gigabyte SSD. And you'll be able to order that in order to start your programming. One other small note, as we were teasing, because of the move to ARM-powered chips, iOS and iPadOS apps will run natively on macOS in the future.
Yeah.
Wow.
So one tidbit I can throw in about like performance is that the A12Z, which is the chip that's in the newest iPads, is better than the chip that you get with the entry level MacBook 15-inch MacBook Pro.
Sure, and power consumption is a big part of it. I mean, that's what. Yeah. It's not just that the performance is great; it's that you're getting it at a lower power consumption. I mean, the battery life on these things is going to be out of control.
Wild, yeah. I noticed like the battery on my new laptop is like really good already. It's also, you have like new laptop lifestyle, but like I can't even imagine what it would be like on a, presumably that's like the part of the point of this too. So presumably it's good. I don't know. Like you said, they didn't really get specific with it.
I'm interested to the thing I was most excited about of this whole presentation that is relevant to my job is what do they mean by Linux virtualization? Is this just like, because it's weird, they didn't show off any native app. It was always like, right? They showed Parallels.
Yeah.
And they vaguely showed something about Docker.
They said like, we're going to be working with Docker or something.
Right, and I've been meaning to like dive into these like WWDC sessions that have been released and stuff, because you can do that today. So it seems like they're announcing something there, but I'm still not sure what they're announcing. If what they're announcing is like much lighter weight virtualization stuff, like there's a lot of stuff you can do on Linux now where instead of booting up a VM, you start the VM and it's just like starting a program, except the VM runs in its own. It has its own network and its own process space and stuff. So it's much faster. It's less secure. It's technically not virtualization at all, but it's much faster. If macOS has this, it's going to be a game changer for developers. But I still can't tell if they have it.
Well, I would think, they didn't go super deep into sort of the nitty-gritty of this part of the announcement. But I would think if they took the time to show it off here, that they're serious about it. And maybe that's an unfair assumption. But, obviously this whole thing is a moving target at this point.
And it was so weird to have them announce something, and then the thing that they show is a bunch of third-party apps that already exist.
Yep.
And I was like, wait a second, it sounds like you're announcing that this is now possible, but I know it is possible. So, yeah, I will do more research and try to come back next week and see what I can find.
Yeah. So you mentioned native apps running natively on the computers. That's cool, because presumably just like they said, iOS apps, as long as the developers agree to it, will just be like available to download on your Mac, which is kind of cool. Get your Overcast, right? Like I'll get my Overcast presumably one way or another. But for like mobile if you're like developing iOS apps, you right now working on it, you run the apps in a program called the simulator, which is doing some like, some sort of like translation to like run apps that are supposed to run on an iPhone on Mac OS, which it's like, it runs pretty well. It's pretty good, but it's like, there's some some performance and some integration is lost because you're running in this like simulated environment, I guess. So that's kind of like pretty cool. Could be really cool, I guess. Presumably it will be like a lot faster and like easier to work with than what we have now, or one could imagine how it would be. Who knows what reality will be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this was a very developer-focused announcement. They spent most of the time talking about how apps would work, how you would take your existing apps and make them compatible, how you'll be able to build one app and it would work everywhere, sort of unifying everything. I think as a user, I'm immensely skeptical of iOS and iPadOS apps on macOS from a user perspective, because I think in select cases like an Overcast where it's just a big play button and a list of shows, that's going to be fine. They showed like Apple Arcade games and things like that where I'm like, is that going to be great with mouse and keyboard support? And that sort of, I mean, Google introduced Android apps into Chrome OS years ago, and I don't think anyone ever noticed or cared. So I'm just curious. I'm curious if this will lead, because I'm assuming, again, not a developer, I'm assuming the theory is that, does this mean people are going to be more likely to build apps exclusively for iOS and iPadOS, knowing they can just throw them on Mac without thinking, or will this incentivize them, because it's one platform everywhere, to actually build individual apps for each, because enough of the underlying architecture is the same?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it may be both, right?
I mean, it depends on the app.
It's right. Well, like you said, like maybe for some apps, if the like whatever defaults, you get just like popping this thing on here is like good enough, then like, maybe it's good enough. Like Overcast, like things where it's like an app, a list of things and a play button. It's like, okay, like, is it going to be the most amazing like desktop-y thing? Like probably not, but will it work for what it is? Like probably so. So I feel like that's just kind of like gravy, right? Because you get apps where it's like the developer doesn't have time or resources to make an actual Mac app, so you get this app for free. Like, yeah, maybe a tack on is that like it's easier and like more accessible to make a proper desktop app, or like, make like little tweaks here and there that make the Catalyst version or something work better. But
my only thought on that is I think the sort of mobile apps are going to be a stopgap on macOS, and the reason is that when they first switch to ARM, they'll get the big brands to convert their apps, the Adobes and the whatever of the world. But I think when you look at a lot of these like really nicely built custom video editing and photo editing apps for iPad that are like super powerful and super customized for ARM, I think the developers are gonna say, just use our iPad app for now on your Mac as we develop something more robust for the desktop. A company that would have only built an iPadOS app years ago can now automatically be on Mac, while either they build something else or don't. So I think that's temporary. I think 5 years from now, I think there are going to be enough good macOS exclusive experiences that I don't know how many people are going to be like, no, I'll just download the iOS version, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I wonder if the iPad keyboard with trackpad support will make it so that future iPad apps are more Mac compatible out of the box.
Or make more Mac OS apps that you can easily convert into ARM apps, then get put on iPad. That will be interesting in the other direction.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is really zany stuff. I don't understand any of it, but what I do understand is if I were a developer, they made all of this seem very easy. Like if I had to say, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how thought out did Apple make their decisions on this? I'd be like, it seems pretty thought out. Like, I'm not an expert, but like, even if someone doesn't know anything, they explained it in a way where I'm like, oh, it does seem really easy. But again, I'm not a developer, so.
Yeah, it seems
I think for most apps it will be pretty easy.
Yeah. It seems like there are a lot of options. Like, you have options, right? Which is good, probably. I think I was watching this with some of my coworkers who have worked with Xcode for longer than I have, and they were quite skeptical that it will be as easy as they've made it sound.
Sure.
I think for good reason. They've been burned before. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think like options are good. Like, there are different from the sounds of it, like the Rosetta stuff kind of just works, right? Like, things that aren't written or compiled for this will, in the short term at least, be like theoretically functional.
That is the thing I have the most questions about, is that Rosetta 2.
Right. I guess that was kind of before my time knowing anything about Macs, but like that was Rosetta 1 was like a thing before. Like, I remember seeing or hearing about it, but I've never used I've only ever used an Intel Mac.
I mean, they certainly did promise a lot today. There's no doubt about that. I mean, when you put up demos of like, oh, here's a video game that we didn't touch, we just threw in Rosetta 2 and it's running perfectly fine. You're like, you're making claims that I hope you can back up. So,
yeah,
I think the interesting thing for me, A, in the announcement, B, to watch moving forward, is the fact that they will sell ARM Macs and Intel Macs side by side. And I'm very curious what the market reaction to that is going to be, A, from a Mac insider know the difference perspective, but also from the mom or the aunt or the grandpa who doesn't know the difference between ARM and Intel and just wants to, what's the price difference going to be between those computers? I mean, obviously we won't know this for a while, but that is going to be so interesting, not now, but 2 years from now, how that shakes out. And how long do you support? Because there are millions of Intel Macs out there. How long do you support those? This is just phase 0.01 of this.
Yeah, totally. It's going to be a wild ride. A wild ride.
Hey, all I needed to hear that PowerPoint is now using Apple's Metal for rendering, I was sold. I've always said PowerPoint doesn't render fast enough.
You must make a lot of PowerPoints.
You have no idea. I don't anymore. I used to do a lot more, and thankfully I've sort of weaned myself off of them. But, oh man, I used to... Everything I ever did was in PowerPoint. Very upsetting. Alrighty, well that's pretty much all the news that's fit to print. The software will come out in the fall alongside, we assume, new hardware, and probably not much between now and then, although they usually do a surprise announcement here or there. Yeah. I mean, I think overall, of course, every time I see one of these announcements, I'm like, I gotta buy, take my credit card, buy. But I just get more and more sold into the ecosystem where it's like, I love my iPhone and I like my work MacBook, but it's like, you watch like the Apple TV app where the doorbell camera comes up and tells you Colby's there, and I'm like, damn, that's really cool. Or like the AirPods with your iPod or your iPad, AirPods, the spatial thing, and I'm like, that's cool. It's like, oh, the Apple Watch now will do the, and I'm just like, God, I need more Apple stuff in my life.
That's how they get you.
But not HomePod. I do not want a HomePod. I want to be crystal clear. I will take any other Apple device. I do not want a HomePod. I cannot believe how badly they have bungled that product.
Yeah, it's like they did it and then they forgot about it or something. I don't know.
I just think it wasn't ready because a part of today's announcement was like, Siri knows 20 times more facts than she used to know. And I'm like, ooh, cool. Where it's like, guys, this is weak sauce.
So many facts.
Oh, guys, what a hoot. I can't believe it. Can you believe 7 years ago we were talking about iOS 7? And we're like, oh my God, they got rid of the leather and the felt table in Game Center, and they went to everything being all transparent and brightly colored.
Yep.
And now we're starting to go back. Like some of these new Mac 11 icons are a bit realistic.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Time is a circle.
Did you notice they made all the icons square?
I didn't really notice that. No.
They're
dock,
iPad shaped, yeah.
There's also, and this is kind of unrelated, but Adobe went and updated all of the Creative Cloud apps to all have very, because they used to all be different colors, all the different apps, which is great because you'd be like, oh, purple, that's Premiere. And they've sort of tweaked all the colors so they all look very similar now, which I'm very pissed off about. They didn't make them all the same color, but they muted all the colors and made them like harder to tell the difference between them. I'm like, yeah, that's what people really wanted, Adobe. Cool. Glad you're spending your time on this. And of course, they all auto update, so I look in the taskbar and it's like, oh my God, what the hell did they do to Photoshop?
I bet they paid a consulting company like many thousands and thousands of dollars to tell them to do that.
Well, you know, I was thinking throughout this announcement, I'm like, Windows can never do this. I mean, Windows wants to go to ARM. I mean, they've been pretty clear that they're developing Windows 10 for ARM, and I'm like, they're never. How are they get like? It's never. I couldn't believe it with how slick Apple put this together, and they're like, the only reason we can do it is and like, Windows apps are garbage. Like garbage in, garbage out. And like, there's no Rosetta for Windows apps because I can't imagine you put some utility beta in 1998 through one of these things, and it's what would even happen. Windows apps aren't a thing. I'm very curious what things were like in Washington at Microsoft headquarters of them watching this.
Yeah, totally different like constraints for them.
Yep, and they've been very clear they want to do it for good reason, but they also they don't do as much in-house silicon as Apple does as well. They're partnering outside for most of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm Intel at this point, I got to be, because I read that Microsoft is going to start going AMD in a lot of their Surface devices.
Crazy.
What a world we live in. What a world we live in.
Yeah.
Well, another WWDC survived, obviously. I will say, this is, I think, the first iOS where I'm like, maybe I should do the beta. Like, there is, like, enough kind of, like, cool stuff I would actually use in it. Because usually they're like, oh, we updated the Notes app with a new highlighter color. And I'm like, don't pass, I don't care. But there is enough in there where I'm like, oh, I would use a lot of this stuff.
Well, you should take the challenge and report back, Sean.
No, because the issue is like, I would screw it up so badly. I would just I would find some way to just brick my phone in doing it. And also, it's my work phone. It's not, I don't own the phone, my company does. And they don't give a shit. Like, I could chuck it into a shredder and I don't think it would be the end of the world. But if it breaks, but I will think about it. I got a month to think about it, so I will consider it.
Nice.
Wonderful. Nice. Anything else, guys?
No.
Nope, that's it.
Big day.
Nope.
Big day. I'm sure we got some rest ahead of us. Dan had to escape to the wilderness to get away from it all.
Yeah.
And that didn't even work.
From all of it.
Because he's talking about it now.
It worked enough.
With his little bit of internet. Well, that's excellent. Well, that's great. Well, I appreciate everyone out there for joining us. Of course, our website is don'tpanic.io. Word on the street is we may be getting a new website coming up.
Yeah.
I have.
We're being forced to get a new website because like 10 days from now our old website is going to stop working.
Colby, as a marketing person, can I help you out a little bit with this?
Yeah.
To better serve our customers and our fans, we're developing a new radical web experience.
Yeah.
You asked, we listened. Yeah, and I have, Colby, you were very nice to send the details of how to check out the site. I have purposefully not looked because I really want to be very surprised when it's almost done.
It's probably not going to be that much different than the old website, but it will be a little bit different.
My only question is, will it still have the toggle?
I think so, yeah.
All right. That was the revolutionary feature.
I haven't built the toggle yet, but I'm going to build the toggle because it's awesome.
It's the standout.
Right. How many podcasts have the toggle? No.
We got to trademark that. Don'tPanic.io featuring the toggle TM.
That could be cool. We could get a patent.
Oh, boy. So do go to our current website, don'tpanic.io. All the episodes are there, the audio and the video as well. And, of course, you can subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Apple Podcasts, you can check us out, get a little widget, and play us right from there, or in any of the major other apps, as mentioned. Of course, the video version's on YouTube. And, of course, you can get in touch with us, don'tpanicShow@gmail.com.